What does like a perfect utopic state of data look like to you, Nick?
Inside a company? Like what's the ideal state?
Yeah.
I think part of it is that you've got an agile infrastructure such that as you are adding new types of data, for example, you create a new portal for your customers to connect with each other on, like a community, or you upgrade your support system, or you are using Slack with your customers now. As you add more and more data sources, it's very easy to bring them into the same kind of shared fabric. That's kind of one part. It should be this constantly fluid, infrastructure, and usually that's some combination of some underlying data lake, like a Snowflake or something, and then you obviously systems like Gainsight that turn that into sort of insights and all that, and then action. And so that's kind of one part of it, is this kind of agile infrastructure to get the data together. And then a second part is the processes that turn the data into action, because we've all seen companies that have great reports that are out there about everything, and people aren't doing anything based on them. The behavior hasn't changed, right? And so really turning the kind of insights into actions. The third part is kind of a culture that then uses all those insights to help make the big decisions in the business. And that's where it comes down to people understanding how to interpret data. I've seen even in my own company, people armed with good data but make the wrong decisions because they didn't know how to interpret the data. Like very simple statistic stuff, like okay, well, it feels like all of our churns are correlated with X. Everyone that churns, seems to be in this, be correlated with people that had sponsor changes in the account, right? But they're not realizing, well, that could be the reason, or that could just be like a step on a journey. And the reason that the sponsor change triggered the churn is because your product wasn't really sticky, and therefore when the sponsor came in, they're like, why are we even using this? Why are we renewing this? We're not using it. And so not being able to use data to actually kind of have very deep conversations. An example of that, kind of go back to the philosophy world, is kind of using the 5 whys, right? Which is like, okay, the client churned because the sponsor changed. Well, why did the sponsor change cause the client to churn? Well, they weren't really using the product well before the sponsor change. Why weren't they using the product? Because they didn't start using the product coming out of implementation. Why didn't they use the product out of implementation? Because we didn't give them enough training. Why did we have to give them a lot of training? Well, because this part of the product's really complicated and needs to be overhauled, right? Like that's the kind of thing that people, once armed with data, they need to know how to ask the right questions, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that what's so interesting in today's landscape is that there are very rare opportunities to start fresh and start from scratch, right? We find ourselves 20 years in some cases of large public, databases that have migrated to Salesforce 20 years ago, but there's data in there from 20 years before that. And I think that the entire ecosystem is constantly fighting this battle of keeping a database accurate and fresh, and we're spending probably billions of dollars to do that. And that's the biggest that I think is not having a prescriptive methodology that the entire ecosystem kind of lives and breathes in terms of solving that specific data decay challenge. Because once you solve that specific challenge in that point in time, and then you can prescribe a methodology that analyzes all of the interactions, how data is changing. Traditionally, that's at ingestion sites. It's being manually edited, systems that are syncing to it, that are making those changes. And by actually identifying those, then you can, again, do things like ensuring that the data is enriched in real time. So then you can reformat the data, you can restructure it, you can do or data hygiene, things like lead to account matching, duplicate prevention, and routing. And the thing that from going from 2020 into this new decade, there's going to be a much more granular and laser focus on how to operationalize the data, because now we have all of these machines of keeping data sets fresh. So the data decay challenge is actually becoming less of a universal challenge, but now operationalizing that data, harmonizing the data sets from these very successful, powerful third-party data providers against harmonizing that data against existing CRM and ERP systems and marketing automation systems. I think that's where we're going to see, the opportunity to really turn this kind of, unwieldy ship, or even, sinking ship around. And I think that's why it just resonated so much when you made that post, because it is ironic that we can do so much highly sophisticated things technologically, but we still can't get the company information of Apple to have the right address in someone's Salesforce.com. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible.
And I like, by the way, I like the phrase you use, just to hit on that. I love data decay, because I do think you hit on it.
Yeah.
Like, people often try to solve this with a one-time project, and then the data just decays, right? Versus solving it as a sort of systemic problem.